Hello.
Hi, I am just getting it shared. I was in here earlier, but it kicked me out. I think it probably was like when you recorded or something, when you hit record or something. I don't know.
I didn't. I just opened computer issues, but we're on it.
Always. It's all right. Yeah, we're
I'm
on
going to
it.
make you a co-host as well.
Sweet. Perfect. That'll help.
There you
Cool.
go.
All right. And everyone can see my screen, right?
Yes, I can.
Excellent. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. So just be sure you mute yourself when you're not speaking. And if you are having lagging issues with your internet connection, go ahead and close down your video. Feel free to participate at any time. We do have prepared slides for the next 15 minutes. It's basically a 15-minute presentation at first, and then 15 more minutes for discussions and questions. However, if you want to go ahead and jump in whenever I'm speaking, go ahead and do that. That's perfectly fine.
We also
So
have a Google Doc going in the background for people who want to add questions there, and I can be answering them along the way as well.
yes, thank you, Jen. So who we are, Jen, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. I'm Jen Mansfield. I'm an instructional designer with the college's engineering. And I've been at ASU about 4 years and tend to do a lot with the proctoring and the ed tech and things in this realm.
Very nice. My name is Sam Mikra. I'm an instructional design specialist with the Office of the Dean in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. I've been at ASU almost 6 years now, first with Ruby Wijesuria at UTO and now here at the college. So I'm really excited to go ahead and work with Jen on this and get going. So we're talking about proctoring and what to do with it, right? So what is the point of proctoring? We know that it has to do with academic integrity, making sure that we preserve the integrity of our exams. And we're also talking about making sure we level the playing field for all students, right? So if you have an exam that uses Lockdown Browser, we want to make sure that that Lockdown Browser levels the playing field for all students and everyone has the exact same access to the materials that they can use on the exam, or if they can't use any materials at all, excuse me, just the exam itself. So for that, we have a product called Respondus Lockdown Browser, which I'm sure plenty of you know about. It is a third-party integrated software that is available to all courses in Canvas. And what it does is it allows the complete lockdown of the machine where only the exam is accessible. What's great about that is that it's a quick setup in Canvas. If you've never seen it before, you just have to go into your settings page and go into navigation and you'll see it there. That's where you can enable it. And one of the pros that I really like about it is that the exam can't be copied. So the student can't actually do a copy paste during their exam, and they also can't take like a screenshot of it. Screenshots are disabled as well. So the contents of the exam are entirely set and safe in place there. At the same time, though, the con there is the fact that it is a complete lockdown. So what that means is that students can't use an external program that's outside of Canvas. So if maybe it's an open book exam that you're still locking down, the student can't actually use their Pearson e-text, for example, because the software completely locks down the machine and it only allows them to access the exam in Canvas. And it also doesn't detect users using supplemental materials that are located outside of their machine. So if right now I am taking a Lockdown Browser exam that's just a multiple choice exam, I can go ahead and use my cell phone, for example, to Google. However, we always recommend that the instructors use a timer on the exam and also prohibit backtracking in the exam. So that way, if it's 30 multiple choice questions, 25 minutes total for the exam, there's not that much time for the student to look up answers or whatnot, because you are setting a time limit. And then once a student has answered a question and moves forward, if you have that setting enabled that prohibits backtracking, they can't move back to the question prior. So there are ways around those cons, but I would say the number one con there is that it is a complete lockdown. And then also you're not able to see if the student has materials outside of the computer that they may be using. An added component of Respondus Lockdown Browser, is called Monitor. And what that is, it's all the features of Lockdown Browser, but you also include webcam recording. Webcam recording is pretty cool because it uses artificial intelligence that the software has, and that's how we detect suspected violations. So for example, if the student is using a MacBook Pro, the MacBook Pro has the webcam right in front of the monitor at the top center there, and so do most PCs nowadays. So it expects, and by it I mean Respondus Lockdown Browser, it expects the student to be looking forward at all times to take their exam, because their exam is on the screen, right? So if I'm a student and I'm looking over to the side every so often, Lockdown Browser Monitor, what it does is it takes that AI, and the AI actually can tell that the student looks away at certain times, and that will it will go ahead and flag the video at those sections and say, hey, you know, Sam, suspected violations, eyes left the screen. So with Monitor, your pros there is that the interface, when you're looking at the reviews, the videos where you're reviewing the student take the exam, the interface shows the exact location of the recording where the suspected violations occur. So it's not like you have to search the entire video yourself to see where the student may or may not have cheated. The AI will show you that. And that's kind of what we mean by on-demand proctoring via AI, is that it takes some of the work out for you. It will tell you where it suspects the cheating, and it will show you in the interface of Monitor where to go to find that suspected cheating.
And
Now,
so
again, that is, go ahead.
Another thing that they tend to account for is if their face is missing from the screen, or if additional faces are added to the screen.
Thank you. Yes, that is correct. Monitor will detect if there is no person standing in front of well, not standing, but taking the exam, or if other people come into the room as well. So there is that as well. But again, you know, that also will be part of the con. The instructor or the teaching assistant, if you have one, still would have to review the recordings to ensure the integrity issues, because again, we are talking about artificial intelligence. So even if it flags that the student looked away, maybe the student looked away for just a brief second, just as a reflex or something. So even though the AI will tell you that it's suspected cheating, the instructor or the TA will still want to go in there to make the final decision for themselves of whether or not a violation occurred. And then, as mentioned, the fixed monitor, it only records the student, right? So there are proctoring softwares that will record what's going on the screen and see exactly where the student is clicking and whatnot. Monitor is not going to do that. Monitor is only going to record the whatever the webcam that the student is using can record at that time. If your student does not have a camera, they will not be able to use Respondus Lockdown Monitor, because Monitor will first have to verify that a webcam is available to record the student taking the exam. So that's another con as well. I set this slide up real quick in case you don't know how to set up Lockdown Browser in your Canvas site. Basically, if you're not seeing it in your menu on the left-hand side of your Canvas site, you just have to go down into Settings and click the Navigation tab across the top. And then you'll see the option closer to the bottom of your screen, and then you'll just go ahead and drag it up to go ahead and show in your menu, and then it'll be enabled. Once it's enabled, you're going to go ahead and want to click on Lockdown Browser, and then as you can see here on my screen, there's two components to it, and the third one is optional. So if you're just turning on Lockdown Browser, the one where we're just locking down the screen, you just go ahead and click the radio button there. If you want to go ahead and enable the monitor side of it, where you're going to want them recorded, then you go ahead and do step 3 and click on Require Respondus Monitor for this exam.
And Sam, real quick, oh, you did tell them, sorry, that it's in to go to the settings, because it doesn't automatically show in their navigation.
Yes. Yeah, if you're not seeing it in your navigation, just go ahead and click Settings Navigation, and that'll make it pop up in the left-hand menu. And just real quick, by the way, if you see this little password setting here in the center of my screenshot, that's just an additional password that Lockdown Browser sets that you can set up through Lockdown Browser. When you enable Lockdown Browser for a specific exam, Lockdown Browser automatically creates a password for you. So you don't actually have to put in a password here, because if you do, what basically happens is the student, when they start their exam in Lockdown Browser automatically fills the pre-generated password that it created for the student to access the exam. But then if you as the instructor put in an additional password here under password settings, Lockdown Browser is going to prompt the student for that exam, and so then you would have to give them that exam. So if you just want to use the pre-configured Lockdown Browser one, go ahead and leave password settings blank. And then again, if you want to require the use of monitor, just go ahead and select that radio button and move forward. If you don't want to use the lockdown browsers, but you do want to have some sort of proctoring, you're always welcome to use Zoom. Some faculty are already using Zoom to do their lecturing. You can definitely use Zoom for for an exam as well. What you'll do there is you will set the exam password in Canvas, where you have the options to edit your exam settings, and then you can set the password there. And when it comes time for the exam to happen, you can go ahead and give the password out to the students that are in your course. Now, you may have a question about, well, what happens if maybe a student gives the password to another student that isn't in the Zoom room, that maybe takes the exam later? You can get around that by setting the display after, display until, those availability dates in Canvas. You can get away from those that way. Or maybe you can also change the password after the lectures, after the Zoom proctoring, if you will, is over, and that way the students who were absent that may have gotten the exam password from other students who were present, they won't be able to access the exam. If you have large enrollment and you have a TA, maybe you can also create breakout rooms in Zoom. If you're doing your test that way, you can create the breakout rooms for the large enrollment and then assign a TA to one breakout room. There are workarounds there as well. I understand that with large enrollment, it may be a little harder, but you do have options, you do have workarounds. The pros here is that the exam is taken in real time. And another one that I actually didn't list, but you can do as well, is if you're concerned about what the students might have on their desk at the time that they're taking their exam, or maybe behind their computer on the wall, you can ask the students at any given time possibly to do a room scan, or maybe in order to not disrupt them during their exam, before they get started on the exam, have the students do a room scan. Make sure that you're recording the Zoom meeting, and that way when they're doing the room scan, you can go back afterwards and check the room scan that way. And again, a con here is the higher enrollment courses would require more monitoring. So there we go with the breakout rooms. And if a student has maybe a laptop that doesn't have a working webcam, or just doesn't have a camera, period, you won't be able to proctor those exams there using a webcam. Jen, do you have anything else to add here for the Zoom ideas?
So it does not, just Zoom and lockdown browser with monitor do not record the screen, the student's screen.
Yeah.
So you are only seeing the student and either, what they're doing in that moment, whether they're writing or taking the exam on Canvas. So that is one limitation as well.
Yes. So, so how do you decide? Like, how do we decide which tool to use? Do we even proctor the exam? What do we do? So first things first, let's think about ideas for exam alternatives, right? So if you don't have an exam that's too high stakes, you can consider doing an open book exam. And earlier, I mentioned that you could always set the exam to use a timer and to also prohibit backtracking. So that way, students are still forced to study, to learn the material, to really learn how to analyze and understand the material. So that way they're not just opening their book when they're starting the exam and shuffling through for answers.
And Sam, also, sorry, I heard a good tip from a faculty member as well, as those, as putting a time limit and not allowing backtracking, either having a pool of questions or having Canvas mix up the order. They can also mix up the answer choice order. So if you're worried that they're texting each other during it, that might help to limit some of it as well, since they might get them in different orders or the answer choices are in different orders.
Yes, that's great. That is a great suggestion. Thank you. You can also, so you have that, and then you can also consider projects. Have the students build and create items that demonstrate their learning without the use of a computer. And then the materials can be showcased digitally through pictures, video, Canvas. Just have them submit something through Canvas. And it kind of ties into the next idea, which is presentations. If you are creating something that as an assessment that's a presentation, it's a great way to build teaching and public speaking skills to students as well. So that is an option. Every Canvas course also has the access to digital portfolios, to Digication. You can use that as well. Have the students build a portfolio of the work that they've learned in the past, 3-4 modules, as opposed to having an exam that you would want to proctor. And if you're doing anything written work, a long essay, something like that, consider using the Turnitin plagiarism detector that is also pre-built into Canvas and is completely free. So let's talk about what if it is a stakes exam? What if it's a low stake exam? So low stake exam, we're thinking maybe, Jen, what do you think? Maybe quizzes at the end of a unit, at the end of a chapter that you want to use Respondus Lockdown Browser in. And again, use that timer, use that prohibition of backtracking. Consider for those quizzes that you'd really like to proctor, and remember that it only locks down the screen. Now, for something high stakes, like an actual midterm exam or a final exam, you can go ahead and use that monitor, use techniques like the random room scan at the beginning of the exam before they actually get started, or maybe a mirror that will reflect what is going on behind their computer. And also just remember that you'll need to review the exam at the end. The video that monitor takes, you'll need to review that just to see that if the AI, when it detected some sort of violation, if that was a legit violation, or if it was just maybe, again, a reflex that the student had where they just looked up briefly or maybe talked to themselves for 2 seconds. And of course, Zoom for live proctoring as well, although we do realize it might be better and easier to manage for smaller courses or courses with a TA. So final thoughts, as mentioned, just really consider those alternatives first. Again, going back to the ideas of, maybe doing presentations, maybe using open book exams, and also look at the stakes of your exam. So if it's just quizzes at the end of a chapter/unit to assess learning, you can consider using Lockdown Browser. But once you're getting into those midterms or those really high stake exams at the end of the term, then you definitely want to incorporate Monitor, or if you can, look into Zoom as well.
Another item that you want to consider with no matter what proctoring software you use, because we also have other possibilities if these don't work with you, but you'll want to meet with your instructional design team, is to set up a practice type session, especially if you have not used any kind of online proctoring for your courses in the past, and this is new to the students. Even if it's just a 1 question type thing or a low stakes, no point thing, somehow set up a practice using that technology so that they get a sense of the technology and what it requires ahead of time before they're in a high stakes situation. You'll get a lot less questions and a lot less issues, and students can ensure they're set up correctly before the actual exam.
Yes, thank you. So that's the part of the presentation. Now I'd like to open up the room for questions.
So Sam, I had a question.
Sure.
We use Alex for our exams, so we cannot, I assume we can't use Lockdown Browser and Canvas because the exams are not in Canvas. But in the version of Lockdown Browser that we use for our Alex exams, it's an older version that they tested out. One of the institutional settings is to allow some programs to run at the same time. Is that an option with this Lockdown Browser?
So with the Lockdown Browser in Canvas, I believe it is not. I can verify for you because I remember hearing about Alex and Lockdown Browser through Kalia Cranford. But with the Lockdown Browser in Canvas itself, I haven't seen anything. Jen, do you know? Because I'm fairly certain it won't, and that's the problems we were running into.
Yeah, you can whitelist websites and things like that, but as far as other applications, we really do struggle with that. And that's when we may use a separate alternative depending on your college. I know in engineering, we do have some faculty that use RP Now. It's not widely used. One, because they are not able to completely scale with us, and 2, the provost pays for it.
Yeah,
for fully online courses. So in engineering, we're able to use it for courses that are fully online or are a combined shell that we've already kind of established a precedence of using that. But we do also possibly have the capability of having to use RP Now with a 0% review, but then the review of all of the videos is on you and or your team.
Yeah, I was just asking because what we had done for my class, I have the college math class, we have 100 students in each section or so, and we just couldn't wait to give an exam. So I told it that they could use Zoom. And I had put this into this institutional settings for the version of RP Now that we not RP Now, sorry, the version of Lockdown Browser that we have. And that actually worked pretty well because at least their computer screen was locked down and we were still able to watch what they were doing while they were taking their test. So we watched it live and recorded it through Zoom. So if that was so it used to be an institutional setting in a Lockdown Browser. And I'm pretty sure it's a Respondus version of Lockdown Browser. So I just wondered if that was now or if it was no longer because they now have Monitor as an option.
Yeah, so what it allows, Elizabeth, is, like Jen said, the ability to specify specific websites that students can go to, but it does not allow for applications. So the challenge with Zoom is that, the link is a website,
Right.
but generally what it does is open up a client on the machine, which is an application.
But it doesn't have to, right?
It doesn't have to, right? So, but that's going to be sort of student specific to how their machine is set up and whether they've got the client installed or not.
Well, and whether or not you give them the option to do the website version, because I ended up doing that since I had several students who weren't able to get in with the client, with the app on their computer, and they had been using their phones, and we didn't want them to do that at that point. But that reminds me, though, that's something else we thought of having them do was to try to log in twice into Zoom so that the phone was watching their computer screen and the computer was watching them.
Yeah, and that's something, you could easily do in combination, obviously, with Respondus, is that you use Respondus on the computer to lock down access to anything and have them log in to Zoom for monitoring. Obviously, again, as Sam mentioned, you need to make sure that everyone has the right tools to do that.
Right.
But specific to your question with Alex, because Alex is not an application, it really is a website and everything is server side, I think you should be able to do that.
Okay, that's true. All right. Is there an issue with Chromebook? Is there anything that Lockdown Browser is installing on the student's computer? Because that's something we've had trouble with when they have Chromebooks. So for instance, I have students in online classes who can't use RP Now because they have Chromebooks. So does that happen with the Lockdown Browser and Respondus?
Correct. It uses a Chrome extension that it can't run unless there was an institutional. I put a link to an article in the Q&A doc, but the short answer is no.
Okay. And it indicates Monitor costs money. Is this something that the ASU has a license for already?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons we're pushing people towards that. If it's able to solve their proctoring needs, it's the easiest and most expedient solution. But if you do have something kooky, feel free to reach out to your ed tech or instructional design team to help try and figure out what possibilities are available.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to chime in there, if you're not familiar with RP Now, it's similar to a Respondus, but it has a little more flexibility to allow you to let the students open up applications if they need to upload a file, things like that. As Jen mentioned, the license that we have with RP Now is specific for online courses only. Within engineering, we've kind of worked out an agreement with them, and they raised from the beginning of this remote instruction period that they wouldn't be able to handle the entire university.
Okay.
The way it works is that recording, someone at RP Now actually reviews the videos, and that's the part that they said they couldn't do. What they think they can do is allow us to use their system where we can review the videos. However, there's still a cost to that. So within engineering, we've said that we're holding that back for specific instances. I think you would need to work with Sam and Gemma to determine within the college what the willingness is, if there's some funding resource to cover that cost.
That was my questions.
Okay, I am just pulling up some questions that people had in the chat. The most recent one, Jennifer Patience, where to go? Can we impose a fixed time exam with the lockdown monitor? So yes, as Jen explained, you can set the availability of the exam to be a small window. So that's referring to the display after, display and tell settings in the exam, edit the test options, window edit.
And you would
area.
do this in Canvas. That would be done in Canvas.
Yes,
in
yes,
the exam
yeah.
settings.
The only thing you do when you go into the menu option and click lockdown browser is just enable either lockdown browser or lockdown browser plus monitor. And and maybe if you're gonna add an additional password, you do that there as well. Everything else, like time exceptions, whether it be, enforce a specific time to start and a specific time to end, or if I have a student who needs a time exception, they need 50 minutes as opposed to 30, that's handled in Canvas as well. Do we have any other questions? We still have about 3 minutes left.
What is the cost of RP now? So for what they call the record and deliver service, where they do not review the videos, I think the cost is something like $1.56 per video.
And keep in mind that your students may require more than one video for them to actually get their exam done, because at least in my case, I get, if they get partway through and then it kicks them out, even if they haven't started their exam yet, I get a video. So just.
Yeah. Yeah, and also I do know there's certain instances where if the student's bandwidth is too low, it won't, and this is if you're getting the review part. So if RP Now is reviewing the exam, if the student's bandwidth on their machine, on their internet is too low, the upload process to upload the video from the student's machine to RP Now won't happen until afterwards, after they're done with the exam, because of the upload, because of the bandwidth issues, because the download bandwidth is the student taking the exam, then it can't upload the video to RP Now servers at the same time if their connection is too low or unstable.
Also, one of the things that we really probably want to stress with students when we do exams online, and we tend, when we set up exams, to put this information in the instructions, and again, to verbalize it to the students, to contact the help desk if they're having trouble, either by phone. And I know it's a laughing thing, but the main reason we're doing that is so that hopefully it can at least start logging a ticket, and it can verify their story when they're like, hey, I did this. And because a lot of times we have a hard time recreating what happened because it's the middle of the night and we're not online. So even if the help desk is not able to completely solve their issue, it does allow us the opportunity to backtrack a little bit more and try and dig into what happened.
Yeah, they always like to tell you that, like, you're going to fix it.
Yeah.
I have no idea what's going on.
I did use my magical powers.
That's right. I did have one more question. You mentioned, recording the Zoom meeting, if you're going to use Zoom to look at the students and what's going on. What is the best view for that? When I record, will I record only what I'm seeing on my screen if I'm looking at the gallery view, or will it record all multiple screens of the gallery view?
So when you have the gallery view on, gallery view is when you have all the videos showing at the same time, up to 49 on one screen. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jen or Scott, but it will record the people that have their video on. So it's recording the entire, like if you're not sharing anything on your screen, what's on your screen is all the videos, right? So it'll record that part. And then if you were to share something, then it would go ahead and break it up the way you were seeing it now, where like in my view, I have all of us on the right-hand side in tiles, and then I have my presentation on the screen. That has been my experience with it. Have you seen something different?
So my question is, I've got 100 students. So it takes 4 screens to see them all.
Right.
I'm not going to see all of them unless I move between screens, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I guess I would say that I think if you're choosing Zoom, that's one of the considerations in thinking about the different options. What Zoom allows is as close as you can get to a live proctoring experience, where the video hopefully isn't as necessary or useful. Where the other services, the video is your chance to monitor what the students have done. So while it might be useful for academic integrity cases to get a recording, your best bet is to focus on the live proctoring and have enough people available to view in real time with small enough number of folks.
And I don't know too, I mean, I think, sorry, just real quick, I think also if you're doing it via Zoom and you may, and you're saying, hey, you're going to be turning your videos on because we're going to be proctoring it over Zoom, that itself, it might serve as a deterrent to them cheating. So that's another option, that's another thought as well. What were you going to say? Sorry.
So my other question was, you mentioned using breakout rooms, which is what I think I'm going to try when I give a test on Thursday, because I do have IAs that help me. Can I if I'm recording, it doesn't record the breakout rooms. Those have to be recorded separately by the IA that I put in there. Now, if they're a co-host, can they just click on record and it will let them? Because one of the problems I've had is when people click on record, it says you need permission.
If you've made them a co-host, it will, hosts have the ability to record. So if you've made them a co-host, it shouldn't be giving them that error, but does it give it to them when you've made them a co-host?
I think so I believe that's what happened when we were trying this out with someone else and I was certain they were a co-host and we clicked record and it said you need permission.
I'll test it for you. How about that? I'll test it and get back with you.
It may also be something in your universal settings. So if you went to the zoom.us, you know how there's lots of switches. It may be something in there as well.
So make sure it says that recording is allowed.
There's something to that extent.
Yeah, there's one of those in there. Okay.
Yeah, so I'll test that for you and get back to you. And I'll get back to the crew as well so they can throw that information out to the rest of the attendees as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
If the RP Now ends up being the best solution, how do you actually arrange to pay?
So Jenny, you'll work with me and Gemma Garcia, and then we'll contact Kalia Cranford.
Okay, and because like my class has a fee associated with it, that presumably this would be a legitimate use of that fee. Is that correct?
For that, I would need to ask Gemma because I'm not very familiar with that side. Like that side, I'm not familiar with. I'm sorry. Scott, do you know, like, how does it work in engineering? Do you?
So yeah, you would definitely need to talk with Gemma on that. Before all this happened, we already had an agreement with PSI, the makers of RP Now, where we pay from Fulton an additional amount to have all of our videos reviewed in the online space. So there's already a process in place and a funding source put in place for it. Whereas I don't think other schools have that set up. So it would have to start from almost a procurement. So it's probably not something that could happen right away.
Oh, by like my exam next Thursday? Yeah.
I don't want to speak for other folks, but I think that
okay.
would be close.
I'm just trying to understand. Yeah, like, do we get a purchase order and I can use my class fee, or somehow that's just not even really an option? Is there anywhere that describes this? You mentioned with 2 devices you could use Zoom and Lockdown Monitor. Is there any website or slide set that would show us examples of how to do that?
I don't think so. It's an idea that a few folks have tossed around. I'm not sure that anyone has tried it yet.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, but it is relatively simple to pull off, which is that you simply use Respondus lockdown browser in Canvas with your exam, and assuming that the exam is within Canvas, and you set the time frame, And then you also set a Zoom session and communicate to the students that they should connect to Zoom using their phone.
Or some sort of
Other
iPad
device.
or other.
Or,
device.
yes, or additional device.
And then would the camera aspect of Zoom, that would be coming from their phones? Because it would be really nice to have their phones utilized in some way that they then couldn't be
Usually manipulating and doing.
exactly, that your phone is busy. Yeah, that's in fact why I was thinking it might be particularly useful that their phone is being the camera. Is that what that double mode would be?
That's the idea, yes.
Yeah, the only issue is if you say, well, your phone has to always look at your screen, because you can have monitor looking at you, looking at the student. All they have to do is turn their phone around and then they can start busily. The phone doesn't, the camera on their phone can be just.
Lockdown browser will control their screen. So you don't need to see their screen.
No, I thought I did.
No, but if you want to see that they don't have anything on their computer.
You could have them scan it, yeah.
Yeah.
Or have it point at their desk. Just the fact that it's pointed somewhere that they can't be typing into it would be valuable.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, I don't think you can guarantee that with the, like, I just got a thing today about how to use your phone as a dot cam, and there's a way to have it pointed at my desk, that this holder, that I could still then use it, because I just need to have the right version of the, right side of the camera pointed down. And then I could still see the screen and move around on it.
Well, so the idea with the camera on the phone through Zoom would be to have it pointed at the students so that you can see what they're doing.
Yeah, so you can see they're not using their finger. Yeah, a live
Is
broadcast.
Monitor doing that already?
Well, the thing was, so Monitor can't see their desk.
Right.
And can't see anything else in the room. So if you had the phone set up in
your lap
view, then, and you're not worried about what they're doing on their computer because you've locked that with Respondus.
Right.
So you don't need them to point it at the computer. You'd want them to actually point that at themselves.
Right.
And yes, Monitor can do that also from its vantage point. The bonus of having the live proctoring is that if you sense something that is a concern to you, you can ask them. Right? Whereas with the video, if you see something that is a concern to you, you can't ask them. True. You can just say, that looked fishy.
So one of the problems we ran into with Zoom was that, so that the students didn't disturb each other, but we didn't want somebody to talk to them. We had them turn off their speakers, but leave on their microphone, which meant we had trouble actually communicating with them if they were doing something wrong. Right.
So a lot of folks have tried to use the chat for that function.
Yeah, that's what we tried. But in our case, they can't see the chat because of the way Alex, the lockdown browser and Alex actually just put Zoom in the background, and they see none of that.
Gotcha.
But they would be able to hear each other. So, yeah.
It's just, I've taught a lot of the online classes, and when the students use their phones, they put them in their lap. And so the webcam on the laptop, you never see the phone, you just see them. But then the ones who have glasses, you see the reflection in their glasses. So I was trying to figure out if there was a way we could just use the phone to confirm that they're not like tapping on the phone.
Well, if it's in their lap, you would be able to tell how far away their hands are from it.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, it's just, I feel really badly for the students who don't cheat to get disadvantaged by the ones who do.
Yeah, I caught one of those reflecting in the glasses things, because she had her phone up by the computer, like, and pretended she was just touching things on her screen. It's like, yeah, nope, didn't work. We can see the phone.
Okay, well, if anyone puts together any notes on this combination, I would be very interested. I guess it's sounding quite difficult for my upcoming
exam in a couple of days. Yeah.
Well, it's not this Thursday. It was supposed to be this Thursday. I postponed it to next Thursday. So if there's any, I could test it out with the TA or something.
Yeah, figure out what to ask them, where to put it, and what to look at.
Yeah, we have a couple who are considering doing that. If we get to that point, we'll try to pull something together from what we learn and share that.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Or if you'd like me to be your trial case, if you have some ideas, between the TAs and I, we could run a trial this week to make sure it's feasible for the students next week.
Yeah, my primary suggestion would be just in the community, it would be to do a practice with the students like Jen mentioned, and in the communication to give them some guidance on how you want the camera set, meaning like it should be set up with a side view and maybe even an example video of what it should look like. Because again, the bonus you have when you're using Zoom is that if it's not set up the way you would like, you can tell them to change it.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, anything else?
And we'll be
Okay.
doing, I'm guessing, more of these sessions, you know, especially as people develop examples. We'll have, I'm sure, other proctoring type sessions for these lightning lunches. Blah, 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 blah.
For sure. Well, if anything else comes up, if you have any more questions, folks at Fulton Schools can be reached at fsc-canvas@asu.edu, and then myself and my colleagues at the college can be reached at the college online at asu.edu. Anything else, folks, before we close out?
Thanks for hosting, Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Yeah. All right. Well, everyone have a great day. And for sure, Elizabeth, I'll follow up with you on those breakout rooms, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.